Hey there, everybody. This is Kristin from Teaching Balance, and I'm here with you with this week's mindfulness meditation practice. We are in the month of New Year, New No, and all of the various video practices that we are going to be doing together this month all revolve around this idea of saying no to certain things in a way that serves our best interest, our mental health, and our wellness. And the first week, of course, we did the no resolutions and instead just focusing on deep self-acceptance and self-kindness. Then we got into this no new responsibilities, and I acknowledge the fact that that's very difficult for a variety of reasons, the least of which, of course, is the circumstances in the world at the moment and all the extra demands being put on us professionally and personally. And then for this week, I wanted the invitation to be less external and more internal. And by that I mean saying no to the pressure that we put on ourselves. And this can take a variety of forms. But for me, how I typically experience this is I do put a lot of pressure on myself to be good, obviously, as you know, like all of us, but also to be kind to other people, to be of service to the world, to make a difference, and then it gets into the minutia, to be productive, to be efficient. And ultimately, even though I just kind of cringe when I think about it, but ultimately, to be honest, what that all really is dancing around is perfectionism and me putting pressure on myself to be quote unquote perfect. And it's been hard for me, first of all, to, admit that and to work with it, because that sort of thing is really pretty deeply rooted. And so it came to, for me at least, a really clear kind of tipping point this past year. In particular, certainly with COVID and like the pressure I was putting myself to like handle it well. And then I also after that, signed up for a sort of comprehensive feng shui consultant training program that I think, technically submitted my last report and coursework for yesterday. So looking forward to that. But the point that I want to make is that, along the way, there were times when I just wasn't getting it. And my teacher had to, tell me, like, I think you're missing this, and getting some feedback that was really hard for me to accept, because I'm thinking, like, I thought I read all the things, I took notes on the videos, and, and I submitted my report, and obviously, because I submitted it, I thought it was good, and yet, getting that feedback was really hard for me. But at the same time, particularly those of us, of course, with that education background, it's not about sticking the landing the first time you submit something. And of course, we as teachers, you can't expect your students, nor should they expect themselves, to get everything right and perfect, every time. It is about learning from our mistakes and taking risks and being willing to get out of our comfort zone, et cetera, et cetera. So that's just a little bit of a personal, reveal from me. But I think whether you have perfectionistic tendencies or not, I think it's very fair to assume that the majority of us do have a tendency to put pressure on ourselves. And so my invitation this week is to loosen that tendency, to disrupt it in some way. And instead, this is coming back to that first week, instead of putting pressure on ourselves to be quote unquote perfect, however you might define that, instead just being really deeply accepting of ourselves, not taking ourselves too seriously, and just allowing ourselves to have a little more of a quality of lightness with this world, because it's just, it's not necessary, and it makes things harder than they need to be. And by harder, I do literally mean more difficult, and I also mean just more painful. I mean, it sounds like a big word, but it doesn't have to be so painful to be going through this world as some of us make it to be, through this pressure that we tend to put on ourselves. So that is my invitation to you, to lessen this pressure, to lighten it up, to not take yourself too seriously, and just seeing if that doesn't resonate for you, that's great. Maybe you just are already there, which is lovely. But like I said, I think for many of us, it's a nice reminder. And a perfect segue, actually, to our practice, because if you are like me and many of the people who I have taught over the years when it comes to meditation, we have a quality of putting pressure on ourselves to meditate right, and do a good job and all of that, and to get the rewards and, whatever that might be, the gold star of inner peace, I don't know. But the point I want to make is, let's bring a real quality of lightness and not trying so hard and not putting pressure on ourselves to this practice. So I'm really going to try to infuse our time together on this as much as I can with this. All right, let's go ahead and get started. Normally, I don't really get into the idea of smiling during your practice. I think it's Thich Nhat Hanh that really encourages this idea of smiling through your meditation, inhaling with a smile, and then exhaling, and maybe relaxing, but then once again inhaling, and allowing that smile to be on your face. Now, if you're thinking no, this is my time to relax. I don't want to smile. I want to rest my face. That's fine. But just in the interest of this spirit of lightness and playfulness, maybe letting yourself keep bringing that smile back to your face. And this isn't a performative smile. It's not to be there to make other people feel better, like we often do with our students and our loved ones. But it's a smile just as a way to remind you not to take this quite so seriously. If you haven't already, allow yourself to take some of those deep breaths, and even that can have a funness to it. You can be very dramatic, just inhaling very deeply and exhaling very loudly, assuming you're by yourself and you're not going to startle anyone in your vicinity. Having some fun with that too. I typically don't like to breathe loudly when I'm invited to do so, like in a yoga class or a meditation. And there is something about, I don't know, for whatever reason, it feels silly. And so just going with the silly, because that's the spirit of what we are playing with in our practice today. When it comes to the body, I often allow you and invite you to just notice how things are without feeling any need to change them. And that invitation stands. But the other thing you could do in this interest of being looser and lighter is just allow yourself to notice if there is any tension. Just shake it out. Many of the teachers that I follow talk about really just noticing moments of tension and breathing in the air and then breathing it out, moving your body, moving your arms, wiggling your fingers, feeling the energy in your legs and wiggling your toes. Whatever feels right. This is your permission to do what feels even silly, if it helps to support you in this quality of having lightness and playfulness. Another big part of that too is noticing any judgment that might be coming up. Is there any quality of, oh, all right, already, towards my invitations here today? And that's fine if that's what's happening for you. But allowing yourself just to have a sense of humor about that too. And a sense of humor about whatever judgments or biases or less than playful viewpoint you might be bringing to this practice today. It's all okay. Give yourself permission to be kind if you're not in this super playful mood. And just trust yourself to do whatever feels right to you for the rest of our practice together. So noticing that judgment, releasing it, noticing any pressure that you might be putting on yourself. Ironically, it's not impossible for someone to be questioning, am I being playful enough? Am I being light enough? It's a vicious cycle. So what would it mean to just relax into this? To not try so hard. To just be with how it is. Holding it lightly. Maybe with a smile. And perhaps with a sense of humor, just observing all the myriad of thoughts that might dance across your awareness and try to pull you into something more interesting, like to-dos or worries or replaying something that happened. And having a sense of humor about the wildness of our thoughts or the tediousness of them, or however they may be, as we observe them, and then once again, very lightly and gently bring our attention back to this moment. So let's just chill here for a few minutes and I'll check in shortly. And my final invitation to you for this more playful, smiling practice is in a moment when we're at about the 1 minute left mark. I'm going to invite you to be even more playful and try something I like to do every once in a while where you don't try to stay focused on anything in particular, but instead you just sit and in your mind's eye, keep an eye out for where the next thought's going to come from. So you're almost poised, ready to see it coming. Does it come from the left or the right, the far distance or behind you? So let's just play with keeping an eye out and watching to see where the next thought comes from until we hear that final bell. I was watching for that last bit. Nothing came, which is the fun part about that, actually. When you're sort of in your mind waiting for it to come, which direction does it come from? I think that's a really interesting space to hold and to be in. That is actually also a very focused, mindful state. And then, of course, eventually it does come. And can you notice where from and what it is? It's just a little bit of an interesting sharpening of that perception. So as always, thank you so much for taking this time for yourself. Thank you so much for allowing me to accompany you on this journey. And I hope you have a week filled with no pressure on yourself. And I will see you next time. Take care. Bye.